All right, so let's dive right in today. We're looking at Royal Caribbean Cruises Ltd, RCL, if you're following along with your, stock ticker.
Yep.
I'm going to use this analyst report,
Yeah.
kind of break it down, see what's going on, see if it makes sense to maybe buy this stock, maybe not.
Yeah, we'll be your guide through this report, and it's pretty interesting. RCL had a really record-breaking year last year, but there are some people saying that the stock might be how do I put this? A little overvalued right now.
Okay, well, let's start with the good stuff.
Yeah.
RCL wrapped up 2024 with record revenue and sold 8.6 million vacations, which, wow, that's a lot of vacations.
Yeah.
Plus, their net yield growth hit 11.6%. So, I mean, is that a big deal?
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Basically, net yield growth means how much profit are they making from each passenger, right?
Right.
So a double-digit increase, that's a really good sign. They're managing their pricing well, and people are spending more on board,
Right.
which is what they want. And get this, they also achieved investment-grade balance sheet metrics like a year and a half ahead of schedule.
Okay, slow down for a second. Investment grade, for those of us who aren't, financial experts, break that down.
Right, of course. So basically, it means that they've really gotten their debt down and their, overall finances are looking really good. Like, think of it like having a really good credit score. It makes them more appealing to lenders. They can get better interest rates when they borrow money. And that means that frees up more cash for them to do things like, I don't know, launch new ships, things like that,
Right,
which they are doing.
Okay, so that's good for investors, right? Like
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows stability.
Okay.
And a really good base for them to, keep growing in the future. And actually, speaking of growth, they're projecting, a 5.4% increase in capacity for 2025. And that's going to be driven by new ships, like the Star of the Seas, Celebrity XL.
Oh, yeah. I saw those pictures of Utopia of the Seas. It is massive. It's like a floating city.
He really is.
Yeah. But it's not just new ships, right?
No, not just new ships. There's this really interesting thing called wave season that I saw in this report. And
Wave season, okay.
yeah, it's not what you think. It's not like, some surfing paradise or whatever. It's actually a key time for cruise lines. It's basically January to March when most people book their cruises.
Okay, so like a big booking season.
Huge booking season.
Right.
And RCL just had a record wave season, which means that, demand for cruises is still really strong.
Wow.
And that gives them, even more flexibility with pricing and helps support their projections for, a really positive 2025.
Okay, so they're riding a wave of success, literally and figuratively.
I like that, yeah.
But even the best ships need, calm seas to sail on, right?
Right.
So what does the report say about, their competition? What's the landscape like?
Yeah, so that's where this idea of an economic moat comes in. Basically, it's how analysts figure out how strong a company's advantage is over its competitors. And in RCL's case, they gave it a narrow moat.
Narrow. Does that mean they're in, like, a little bit of trouble?
Well, it means that, yeah, while they've got some definite strengths, the cruise industry is just really, really competitive these days.
Okay.
Like, they've got a really strong brand portfolio with names like Royal Caribbean International, Celebrity Cruises. Those attract lots of different types of travelers. They're known for, innovative ships. And you mentioned those private destinations like Coco Cay.
Yeah, I've heard those are pretty amazing.
They are. They really draw in people who want something a little different, more than just the usual ports.
Okay.
And they're even expanding into river cruising with Celebrity River Cruises. That's launching in 2027, actually.
Oh.
So that's tapping into a whole different market. But the narrow moat thing, that means that all of those advantages, they might not be enough to totally protect them from, all the competition or if the economy goes down.
So far, it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Like, strong performance, they're growing, but, they've got a lot of competition.
Lots of competition.
But the real question is, for everyone listening, is this a stock worth buying?
Yeah, to figure that out, we got to look at the analyst's valuation, what they think the company is actually worth, and dive into all those potential risks.
Right, yeah.
We'll pick up on that in part 2. All right, so picking up where we left off, let's talk about this valuation. The analyst put a fair value estimate on RCL at $234.78.
Okay, so that's quite a bit lower than what it's trading at right now.
It is.
It's like around 267, 268, something like that.
Right, exactly. So they're basically saying that the stock is, maybe a little overvalued, like what it's trading at right now doesn't actually match up with what they think the company's really worth.
Okay, interesting. So it's not just about the price, right? Like they're saying.
Yeah.
There are some risks involved too.
Yeah, definitely. They pointed out a few things that could really impact, how profitable RCL is going to be going forward.
All right, well, let's get into it. What are they worried about?
Well, one thing is this huge capital expenditure they've got planned for 2025. Like, we're talking $5 billion.
$5 billion. That's a lot.
A lot of money. Some of that's going to go to new ships, obviously, but a lot of it's also going to other investments that aren't ships.
Well, isn't that good? I mean, we were just talking about those new ships, how they're driving growth and, private destinations, all that stuff. That seems like a good investment to make.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's definitely important for them to stay competitive and attract new passengers.
Hmm.
But what if the demand for cruises goes down, or what if they don't grow as much as they're expecting?
Hmm.
That $5 billion, it could become a problem, you know? It could weigh them down.
So it's kind of like a risky bet.
It is. It's a big bet. And the whole global economy right now,
Yeah.
it's a little shaky.
Yeah.
The analysts are really looking at what could happen if there's a recession.
Right.
Because when people start to feel uncertain about their money, they're going to cut back on things like vacations.
Yeah, a cruise is definitely a luxury, not a necessity.
Exactly. And some analysts are even saying, it could be worse than just a little recession. Like it could be, a really serious downturn.
Oh, wow.
And that would hit the travel industry really, really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, even if RCL has the coolest ships, the best destinations, if people just aren't traveling,
Right. They're in trouble.
they're in trouble.
Okay, so even if they're doing well now, they're not like immune to what's happening in the world. Okay. What about those other things we talked about, like fuel prices and currency exchange rates?
Oh, yeah. Those are big ones, too.
How much of a problem are those?
Well, fuel prices, I mean, cruise ships, they use a ton of fuel.
Right.
So even if the price goes up just a little, that can really eat into RCL's profits,
Yeah.
especially if they don't want to raise ticket prices and scare customers away to competitors.
So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They need to keep their prices, competitive, but they also have all these costs that they can't really control.
Yeah. And then, with the exchange rates, they operate all over the world.
Right.
So the value of different currencies is always changing. It's like it makes it really hard for them to predict how much money they're actually going to make.
Right.
Like a strong dollar, that could mean less profit from trips that are outside the U.S.
Yeah.
It's really unpredictable.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's really hard to predict, like, what's going to happen with all these external factors.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like trying to predict the weather, you
Yeah,
don't really know what's going to happen. But RCL's not the only one dealing with this, right?
Yeah.
Like their competitors, they've got the same issues to deal with.
True, yeah.
And that kind of brings us to the last piece of this puzzle. How do they actually compare to the competition?
Yeah.
Can they, withstand all this pressure with that narrow economic moat?
Right.
We'll talk about that in the last part.
Okay, so we're back. We've talked about how RCL is doing, looked at their money situation, and even talked about some of the risks they face. Now let's see how they measure up against their rivals in the cruise industry.
Yeah, it's a pretty competitive market out there. You've got big names like Carnival and Norwegian Cruise Line.
Right.
And then you've got some newer companies like Virgin Voyages trying to change things up, attracting a different kind of customer.
Right. So it sounds like RCL's got their work cut out for them. What are they doing to, stay ahead in all of that?
Well, one of their strengths is they have a variety of brands. It's like having a whole fleet of ships, each with its own style. You've got Royal Caribbean International. They're the big ones, lots of families, lots of activities. Then you've got Celebrity Cruises, a little more upscale, focused on fancy dining and luxury. And then there's Silversea. That's their ultra-luxury brand for people who want the best of the best.
So they're trying to appeal to, like, everyone, basically.
Pretty much. But it's not just about the name. They're also really pushing for innovation, especially when it comes to their ships and what you can do on board.
Yeah, we talked about Icon of the Seas with those crazy water slides.
Mm-hmm.
But are there other examples of how they're innovating?
Oh, tons. They're using a lot of new technology to make the experience better for passengers.
Right.
Think like mobile apps where you can control everything in your cabin, even book shows. They're also trying to be more sustainable.
Okay, yeah, that's becoming more and more important for people, right?
Definitely. They're designing fuel-efficient ships and trying to reduce waste.
Smart move.
Yeah, they want to appeal to travelers who care about the environment too. And they're not afraid to try new things. Like moving into river cruising, that's a whole new market for them, usually attracts an older crowd.
Interesting. So they're doing a lot of different things to try to stay ahead. But where does that leave them with pricing? Are they aiming for the high end, or are they trying to compete on being more affordable?
That's a good question. They generally price themselves a bit higher than average, especially with Royal Caribbean International and Celebrity Cruises. They're banking on the idea that their ships, their destinations, and their reputation are worth that extra cost.
Okay, so it's a risky strategy, but it sounds like it's working out for them so far.
Yeah, it seems to be. But what about those new companies, the disruptors like Virgin Voyages? Are they stealing customers from RCL?
That's what I'm wondering.
Well, Virgin Voyages is definitely making a splash. They're going after a younger, hipper crowd who might not be into the typical, sometimes cheesy image of cruising.
Right.
They're all about style, nightlife, good food, and wellness.
Yeah, so they're like the cool new kids on the block.
Exactly. And RCL sees that. They know they got to appeal to younger travelers to stay in the game. That's why they're moving into river cruising and always trying new things.
Okay, so taking everything into account, what's the verdict? Should people invest in RCL?
Well, that depends on what you're looking for as an investor and how much risk you're willing to take. It's tough to say for sure.
Right, no guarantees.
Mm.
But what are some key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind?
Here's the rundown. RCL has been doing really well financially. They're putting a lot of money into new ideas and expanding into new markets. And they've got something for everyone with their different brands.
That's a lot to consider. But what about those risks? The chance of a recession, fuel costs going up, the competition? How should investors balance all that out?
It's a tough call. They've got some serious challenges ahead, but they're also a strong company with a solid plan and a history of bouncing back from tough times.
So it's not a clear yes or no.
Nope. There's no such thing as a perfect investment, especially now with things changing so much. But if you look at RCL's strengths, weaknesses, and what's happening in the world, you can make a smarter decision about whether the stock is right for you.
Good advice. And that's our deep dive into Royal Caribbean Cruises LPD. We hope this has given you a better understanding of what they're doing and what challenges they're facing.
One last thought before we go. With the cruise industry facing some rough seas ahead, can RCL keep exceeding expectations and justify their current stock price? We encourage you to do your own research and think about all the angles before you make any decisions.
That wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive. Hope you found it useful. If you did, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss any of our future episodes. We'll be diving into more interesting topics soon. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.